Just the other day I witnessed something horrific. I feel that it is important to tell the world of my experience because it kills me to keep it inside. The other day, I was walking home from the supermarket when I witnessed a lady smack her child upside the head. This was not what was horrific about that day, however. It was the minutes following this that I saw something that would change my life forever. As I approached the woman who had hit her child, I pulled out my pocket knife. I quickly punctured the woman's jugular vein with it, witnessing her blood spill to the sidewalk. I proceeded to cut the child into small pieces before devouring him in front of hundreds of onlookers. In a moment of ecstasy, I pulled a gun on the onlookers. Screaming and shouting, they ran for their lives. But none of them would live. I shot them in the back of the head one by one. Upon falling to the ground, I would fuck their dead corpses, followed by ejaculating in my own mouth. This was not what was horrific about that day, however. Not by any stretch. In the moments preceding these actions of mine, I made my way to a craft shop. I walked through the store, murdering anyone who stood in my way. As I neared the back of the store, I found what I was looking for: a jar of black paint. I left the store with the paint and then dropped my pants. I then dipped my cock and balls into the jar, making sure it was completely covered. For the next hour, I went around town slapping my nasty dick on car and store windows. People were hysterical as I left a revealing print of my junk on anything it touched. This, however, was not what made that day horrific. No, not at all. Having nearly covered everything in town with the stink of my balls, I attempted to take a nap under a crabapple tree in the park. Soon after laying down, I was startled to see a Jack Russell Terrier sleeping beside me. Cute as he was, I could not take any chances. As the little guy continued to sleep, I removed the leash that was tied to the trunk of the crabapple tree. Moving quietly, I crept up beside a car stopped in traffic, tying the leash to the door handle. I watched in amazement as the car began to speed off. The Jack Russell Terrier had been dragged almost 50 feet before I heard its first yelp. Being dragged by its neck, the little guy bounced and flipped like a bouncy ball down a stairwell. As he hit the asphalt, I could make out small particles of his fur in the air as he was dragged down the street. I followed the car for a half-mile or so before I saw the dog break off from the leash and tumble to the side of the road. I used caution as I approached him, firing 2 shots from my pistol into his head. As he lay there limp and motionless, I noticed a large cavity on his underside that had opened up while he was being dragged. I knelt down beside the little guy and reached my arm up into his body. After minutes of exploration, I pulled out a handful of blood and guts. Making the most of the situation, I began to rub the dog's blood over my face and body. I then wrapped the dog's carcass around my waist as a loincloth. For the next hour, I felt like a true warrior. That, however, was not what made that day horrific. Not even close. As I walked through town, something suddenly caught my eye. To my left was a hair salon, and inside was something you would not believe. Sitting in front of a mirror was the fattest girl I had ever seen, wearing a dress. She had rolls on her face, rolls on her neck, rolls on her knees, and even rolls on her ankles. She sat there, fat as fuck. Something that she must do often. The beautician tended to the girl's hair as it fell over her fat face and neck. I was in shock. Here was a girl, clearly repulsive, who was actually trying to look pretty. This, my friends, is what made that day so horrific.